Today, we're going to unlock some of the hidden parts of the human mind. I'm talking about the powerful, invisible forces that really shape everything we do, everything we think, and everything we feel. So let's dive right in.
You know the feeling, right? You're in the middle of a conversation, you go to say one thing, and something totally different just pops out. We've all been there. People call it a Freudian slip. But what if it wasn't an accident at all? What if that was actually a little message from a part of you that you don't even know is there?
So here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to investigate that exact idea. We'll start with the mind's hidden motives and even meet the man himself, Sigmund Freud. Then we're going to break down his famous three-part personality, see how his ideas grew and changed over time, and discover how therapy tries to bring all this stuff to light. And finally, we'll weigh its controversial, but, very lasting legacy.
Okay, let's kick things off with the absolute foundational idea of the psychodynamic approach. The principle that, deep in our minds, there really are no accidents. This big idea is called psychic determinism, and it's the core belief that everything we do, everything, from huge life decisions down to those little slips of the tongue, has a very specific, underlying cause in our minds. So from this point of view, nothing is random. Your mind is just, it's revealing its hidden agenda. So that's the big question, right? Where do all these hidden intentions actually come from? Well, to answer that, we have to turn to the father of psychoanalysis himself, Sigmund Freud, and his most famous idea of all, the unconscious mind.
See, Freud's really radical idea was that our conscious mind, the thoughts we're actually aware that we're having, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real action, he argued, is happening deep, deep beneath the surface. And this iceberg metaphor just illustrates his point perfectly. Imagine your mind is an iceberg. That small little tip that's floating above the water, that's your conscious mind. It's everything you're aware of right this second. But the huge, massive bulk of that iceberg is underwater, and that is the unconscious. It's this deep reservoir of hidden fears, secret desires, shameful memories, all the stuff that, while it's out of sight, is powerfully steering the direction of the entire iceberg.
But how does this whole internal world actually work? Freud didn't just map out the mind's territory, he also described the characters who are basically fighting for control inside it. And this brings us to the constant inner conflict that helps define who we are. Yeah, exactly. If the unconscious is this hidden battleground, then who's actually fighting? Well, Freud proposed that our personality is made up of three distinct parts, and let me tell you, they each have their own agenda.
Think of it like a constant tug-of-war happening inside your head. First, you've got the id. This is the totally impulsive, primitive part of you. It operates on what Freud called the pleasure principle. It just wants what it wants, and it wants it now. Then, on the other side, you have the superego. That's your moral compass, your inner critic, always pushing you to be perfect and telling you what's right and wrong. And who's caught in the middle? That's the ego. Its job is to be the mediator, to find a way to satisfy the id's crazy urges in a way that's realistic and won't get you in trouble with the superego. And this battle, it's happening all the time.
But the story does not end with Freud. Not at all. His theories were really just a starting point that sparked a whole century of debate and development from new thinkers with brand new ideas.
And the evolution here was pretty significant. For instance, Carl Jung, who was once Freud's hand-picked successor, broke away and introduced this amazing idea of a collective unconscious that's shared by all of humanity. Then Alfred Adler came along and shifted the focus to our social drives and our struggle to overcome feelings of inferiority. And much later, Erik Erikson argued that we keep developing psychologically our entire lives, not just when we're kids. So, we've got this really complex theory of the mind, but how does it actually help people? Well, that brings us to the practical application of all these ideas, what became known as the talking cure, or psychodynamic therapy.
The main goal is pretty simple: make the unconscious conscious. In therapy, this means digging into difficult emotions and recognizing the patterns of avoidance. All the clever ways we protect ourselves from painful thoughts. The therapist helps you find these recurring themes, especially in your relationships, and connect them all the way back to your past. Even the relationship you have with the therapist itself becomes a tool to see these patterns play out in real time.
Now, you might be familiar with a really common therapy called CBT. So how is this different? Well, think of it this way. CBT is super practical. It focuses on the how. Like, how can we change these negative thoughts right now? Psychodynamic therapy, on the other hand, is all about the why. Why are you having these feelings in the first place? It digs deep into your past to find the root causes, aiming for this profound self-insight rather than just immediate symptom relief.
Okay, so this brings us to the final verdict on the whole psychodynamic approach. Because, let's be honest, it's a theory that completely changed psychology, but it is definitely not without its really fierce critics. First, its influence is just undeniable. The idea that we're driven by things outside of our own awareness, that's basically mainstream now. The emphasis on how much our early childhood matters has shaped everything from parenting to education. And, maybe the biggest one of all, Freud's talking cure literally created the foundation for pretty much all modern psychotherapy today.
But the criticisms are just as big. I mean, how do you scientifically test something like the id or the superego? They're abstract, you can't really measure them. The approach is also seen as way too deterministic, kind of suggesting our personality is locked in by our past, with not much room for free will. And finally, you have to remember, these theories were developed from a tiny, biased sample of patients, reflecting the culture of 19th century Vienna, not the diverse world we live in today.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, even if parts of the theory feel a bit unscientific or outdated, the psychodynamic approach leaves us with a really powerful and provocative question. It asks us to look beneath the surface of our own lives and just consider the unseen forces that might be at play. It makes you wonder, what hidden motives, born from your past, might be shaping the story that you're living today?